Well, now that you have a good idea about the different tools that we can use to do drafting, let's talk a little bit more specifically about how we get started with drafting. Well, to start off, to look at a definition for technical drawing. As a definition, it would say that drawing with the aid of tools. If you compare that to sketching, like we talked about a few chapters ago, sketching is without any use of tools. It can be a variety of any way that we can draw something, so a pencil, a pen, a marker, anything, but there are no other tools involved in terms of accuracy. Well, that's not the case with technical drawing. Technical drawing, there are specific ways that we do technical drawing. ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, has a whole list of standards that we have to follow when we do drafting. So there's certain protocols, there's certain ways that we draw every line, and that way there's consistency, worldwide consistency in terms of how we do our drafting. And so in order to make it that perfect, that accurate, we need the use of tools to make sure that it's professional looking and just the way it needs to be. When we talk about drafting, drafting is referred to as the language of industry. And when you think about it, the whole purpose of industry is to produce products. And a wide variety of different products are produced through industry. But in order to produce a product, first we have to have a plan in place on the specifics of that product. It's not like we just tell our manufacturing company, hey, would you build us some cabinets, but that's it. We don't give them any specifics, any sizes, or those things. So we do drafting. Drafting is a process of getting down those specifics, the exact sizes, the exact shape, where things are located. That way there's a clear plan in place, the design aspect. That way that production company can take and see, okay, this is exactly what we're supposed to do, and they can set it up to make thousands of them. And so that's why it's called the language of industry. So when we do technical drawings, the lines that we use are referred to as or built into what's called the alphabet of lines. And just like the alphabet is a whole list of different letters, the alphabet of lines is a list of specific types of lines that we use when we do drawing. And so you can see here on the list, start with a visible line. And so the visible or object line is kind of just our standard line that we'd use for specific objects. We can also have an invisible line or a hidden line that we'd use to demonstrate products that are in the background. So places where you can't see a change in direction specifically in the front, but it is a change in direction in the back, we'd use a hidden line. We also have center lines that you see here. And with the center line, it's a long line with dash in the middle, and that continues, and that identifies the center location of whether it be an arc or a circle or a variety of things. We could use a center line. Dimension line here to identify the dimensions. You can see the difference in the variation in terms of the line thickness. So our object lines up here at the top are going to be dark, thick lines, and as we work our way down here, you can see our center lines or dimension lines are a little bit thinner. And then as you look your way down, we have a variety of other different lines that we use. And the whole idea of using the alphabet of lines is that it brings clarification to the drawing. If you look at this part up here on the top right, you can see that if every one of those lines was drawn exactly the same with the exact line thickness and continuation of line, it would be a little difficult to really understand what's going on here. But by the use of different lines, we can identify, okay, this feature here is in the background because it's a hidden line. This initial arm swing here, it's not that there's two arms, it's this initial one is called a phantom line, which identifies that this will rotate along this plane. And here's a section line that you see here and a variety of other lines. So the whole idea of using different lines is that it brings clarification to our drawings. All of these components and parts are put into what's called a title block, and so we take our drawing and it's on the inside of the paper. Around the outside of the paper is the title block that gives a nice frame for this drawing, but included in the title block is the communication about the specifics of the drawing. What company or who has drawn it, the date, the scale, all kinds of other information that is needed with that drawing goes within the title block area. Next we have the lettering that we use. As we put lettering on a drawing, there's a specific, again coming back to the ANSI standards, there's specific lettering that we use when we do drawing. The standard drafting font or typeface that we use is a Gothic style of font. And the Gothic style is a sans serif. We refer to it as a sans serif type of font. Sans is French for without, and serif is the little extra decorative on each one of the letters. So the font that you see here in my bullets are a sans serif style of font, very similar to the Gothic style of font. I think this might happen to be Arial that I'm using in the presentation here. But notice the difference between this font and the font of the title up top here, the lettering. And see, on the end of each one of the letters you can see a little bit of some kind of decorative edge here. And it could be very discreet. Let's say with the G, for example, this little extra line at the top there is a serif. Well, when we're drafting by hand, we don't want to have to mess with all those little serifs. And so that's why we use a sans serif, meaning a font that is without serifs, because then we can just draw the basic line as it is right there. And so basically we can categorize all the different typefaces or fonts into whether they're a serif style font or a sans serif style font. As we do the height of our text, the standard height that we traditionally use is an 1/8 inch. So as we're putting dimensions on a drawing, as we are doing different lettering throughout the drawing, the standard size is 1/8 inch. We may have maybe some larger titles or something that may go up to a 1/4 inch, but the standard size font we use when we're doing drafting is an 1/8 of an inch. Now, one of the interesting things that has changed in the last 20 years with the development of computer systems, Xerox copy machines, plotters, those types of things, is the method by which we copy drawing. So once we actually have a drawing in place, traditionally there were some different ways that we could get to copying it. As I mentioned in the previous lecture, if we were doing a large structure and we needed several different copies, we had to have a way to do it. Well, we would start off first of all making the original with using an inking process, because that made darker lines that were more permanent. But then we'd have some different ways that we could copy it. Two popular methods were the Diazo print method, which created a white print, or the blueprint method, which that's a common term for those documents, for the drawings where where are the blueprints? Show me the blueprints. And it gets its name because in both of these processes we use a chemical process to make the copy. So again, we have our original in ink. The difference between a Diazo and a blueprint is simply the color of the ink in the paper. So this first example here is a Diazo or white print because the background, as you see, is white, where the lines are blue. Whereas with a blueprint, the opposite happened, where the background was blue, so the majority of it looked blue, which is where it got its name, blueprint, but the actual lines that were on the paper were drawn as white. Again, both of those use a chemical process from the original to these multiple copies that we could make in order to make the copies. As electronic communication and computers and electronics started to develop, then we began to have electronic copy machines, electrostatic copy machines, where we could again take that original but just use the copy machine to make copies of it, which was great. And then as we started to use CAD systems and computers and printers and plotters, then plotters have become the most popular mechanism today, plotters and printers, of producing multiple drawings. So we really don't mess with the Diazo prints or blueprints anymore. It's just much easier now and really less expensive to use either a copy machine, a plotter, or a printer to produce multiple copies of a drawing. Another traditional method that was used to make copies or to archive drawings was using the microfilm method. And this is used in a variety of different industries, but it was also used in the technical drawing arena. So if we had a whole set of, let's say, 50-page, construction documents, 50 different drawings from all the different views and things that we would need in a drawing. Well, if we wanted to archive that, we could use a microfilm process to take and basically photocopy or take pictures of each one of those drawings and store them in a microfilm method, which was a great way of storage. Again, a set of plans with 50 pages, most of these were using a size C or D paper, which is very big, and 50 pages was very thick. Well, that takes up a lot of space. So in terms of archiving, using the microfilm method was a useful way to archive old documents. Well, that concludes our Chapter 9 in terms of getting started with drafting. Again, hopefully you've had some chance to do some hand drafting on your own, or in some of our courses here, you'd have a chance to actually go through and practice doing some hand drafting. It's still an important skill that we use, and there's really some great things that you can learn by doing hand drafting. But again, the majority of our drafting process now today is more so in the CAD system, which we're going to talk about later in this section.